Yeah.
What is up, everyone? My name is Max Currie, and I'm the creator of Death Casset Games. In our last video, we set up some high-level architecture and systems for our game Requiem-Mortem, which is Death Cassette's first project. And in this video, we're going to be adding on to that by increasing the movement controls based off of interactions with the environment. But first, roll the intro. Alright guys, we are back in UE. We're in Unreal Engine 5.3, and last time we set up this sandbox to test some of the systems that we had constructed and implemented, and we're going to be doing the same thing. Now you might notice that I have added something to this end of it over here. Now we have a ramp and a platform that moves into the background. We're in a 3D space, so I thought it would be interesting for the player to be able to move into the background when needed. So how are we going to do this? I mean, at first, when we hit play, you're in here and you can move left and right on the x-axis, and that's it. You can't move up or down. You can't move to or from the camera. All you can do is jump and left and right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build a new character. I'm going to go into our environment folder, and in our exterior, I'm going to right click and create blueprint class. I'm going to select a new actor, and we're going to name it something that we can remember. So BP underscore RM for Requiem-Mortem, side scrolling underscore direction change. It's an exterior direction change. So now we're going to open it up. We're going to add something. We're going to add a box in our component. You want the box collision, and that's it. That's all you need to do. Just kidding. But now that it's in here, what we want to do is we want to navigate away from the viewport and go over to our event graph. With the box still selected, we're going to scroll all the way down here, and we're going to look for our events down at the bottom. And we're going to look for on component begin overlap, and we're going to add that to our event graph. Reselect the box, do the same thing, except now we're looking for on component end overlap. Add that guy in there. Now, the way that this is going to work is that we're going to have to basically, it's tied to the actor, which is going to be just a box collision, and we want to cast that to the player character to manipulate the event graph in the blueprint for the character. So we're going to cast to our BP underscore RM character. Okay. Now it's asking for an object, so we're going to select other actor and just drag that in there. Duplicate the cast and connect it to on end overlap. All right. So now that we're casting to it, what is it that we want to cast? Well, right now, if we go back into our player blueprint, you'll remember that we restricted everything. We got rid of all movement except for along the x-axis. But also, if you select character and look at the planar movement, we constrained the player to the y-axis. So they cannot move on the y-axis. They can only move on the x. So how do we fix that? Well, from our collision actor, we're going to come off of our cast, and we're going to set our plane constraint. And we're looking for enabled. So right now, by default, because of our settings, it is enabled. So on the overlap, we're going to make sure that enabled is unchecked, which means that it is false. So if they're in that box, they won't be constrained by the Y plane. They will be able to move up and down on the Y plane. So we're going to compile. We're going to go back to our environment, and we're going to drag and drop in our new collision. All right. Let's make it wide so that we can get into the plane. Let's make it long, and let's make it tall. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm blocking it out. I'm increasing the size so that the overlap will allow the character to move into the area where the ramp is. And I'm setting it up so that the collision ends just outside of the center where our player actually is on the x-axis. Okay. I'm increasing the height of it just so that if you're jumping, it'll work. All right, here we go. So now we've got our collision actor in the environment. We've set it up so that when we overlap it, we unrestrict our plane constraints and nothing's happening. Well, if you remember, we removed the ability to move on the y-axis. So we have to change that in our character blueprint by duplicating the add movement input, connecting them together, but then routing our y-axis to our new movement input. Now right now it's set to x-axis direction is -1, and that's our player movement along the x-axis, and we don't want that. We want it on the y. So we're going to make this a +1, which means that when they're moving up, it'll be 1, and when they're moving back, it'll be -1. So we're going to pile, we're going to save. All right. So now we're running. We can jump. And now we've entered into our box. And if we hit the W button, we move up. Now here's the problem. Our box ends right here. So we could move this way. And we can move this way. However, we can also still move in this direction, and I don't want that. I want to restrict that movement because I don't want the player going into areas that aren't developed for them. So we're going to go back to our collision, and we're going to finish it out on end overlap. So we're going to grab our set plane constraint enabled and the reference to our character movement, and we're going to duplicate them. Going to set them up exactly the same way by plugging it into our on end. But we want an opposite action, so we're going to check the enabled as true. So now when they stop overlapping the collision, it will re-enable the plane constraints that we initially set up. And there you go. Now when I move out, the character stops moving, and we can move along this plane, and we can come back and right back down. Now here's a problem. Here's an interesting problem. Say the character doesn't come all the way back down to the center. Let's say they come up here. Well, here we have no plane constraints, so they can just run this way, and now they're completely misaligned with the level that we've planned out. So, to fix that, we're going to create another actor. Blueprint class, actor, and we're going to name this one BP_RM, side-scrolling block. Now, I'm sure that there is a better way of doing this. I'm not sure what it is, and I couldn't really find a good reference to figuring it out, so I made up my own. And if anybody has a better way, drop it in the comments. So we created our new block character, and we're going to do the same thing we did for our collision actor. We're going to add a box. We want the box collision. We're just going to leave this standard, except now what we want to do is we want to go down to our collision. Right now, character can character step up on? I don't want them to be able to step up on that. No. And collision preset, overlap all dynamic? No. We're going to do block all. We're going to compile and save, and then we're going to drag our block into the map. We're going to increase the size. We can run up just as intended, run out just as intended. can't move this way. The area is blocked. And we can't move that way. And so we're perfectly aligned exactly as we should be. And everything is as intended. All right, perfect. All right, guys, that's all I've got for this one. Like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram at Death Casset Games, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.